Hello there. If you're watching this video, chances are you've reached a point in life where the noise no longer captivates you like it used to. You're beginning to seek something quieter, something deeper, a voice that doesn't overwhelm you, but gently brings you back to yourself. I didn't create this series to preach or teach. I simply want to share the lessons I and many others over 50 have learned on the journey of living more truthfully, more mindfully, and more peacefully. These are lessons rooted in modern Stoic wisdom, not dry or extreme, but simple and grounded in everyday life. I hope that through each story, each moment of stillness, you'll find something meaningful for yourself. And if one day you too choose to walk in silence with steadiness and calm, remember this: you are not alone. If what I share brings you a sense of peace, feel free to hit subscribe and continue this journey with me through the lessons to come. I like a comment. Even just a few words can be your way of saying, I'm still here, and I'm listening. Lesson 1. Letting go is not losing. It's the beginning of freedom. I want you to imagine this. You're sitting alone in an old room, a space once filled with memories. On the bookshelf rests an old photo, a younger version of you, eyes filled with hope. But that was also the beginning of something lost. A person, a dream, a version of yourself that no longer exists. I once had a patient named Ellen, 63 years old, widowed, retired. She said to me, I can't stop thinking about how things could have been. I should have said that. I should have done this. If only I had one more chance. I held her hand and shared something I've learned after many years studying Stoic philosophy. You can't change the past, but you can always change the way you live with it. Acceptance is not surrender. It is an intentional act, a choice to release what no longer serves the road ahead. We have a limited supply of mental energy. And if you keep using it to wrestle with what's already gone, you'll have nothing left to build what's yet to come. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, don't waste the one life you have the present on what no longer belongs to you. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what can I learn from it? Instead of punishing yourself with regret, try rewriting the story with compassion. Because every emotion from sorrow to rage is born from the way you narrate the past in your mind. Ellen couldn't change the years she'd lost, but she could begin again by forgiving herself. And so can you. You are not a victim. You are the author of the next chapter. And if you're still listening to this, I believe you're ready to pick up the pen. Try this: write down something you've always regretted. Then rewrite it as if you're speaking to someone you deeply love. Be softer. Be kinder. You deserve a new beginning. And that beginning isn't waiting in tomorrow. It starts in how you choose to look at yesterday. Lesson 2. Rebirth is not failure. It's a mark of growth. An old friend of mine, Walter, now 67, used to be a lead engineer in Seattle. He once said something that stayed with me. I used to think that if I had to start over at this age, it meant I'd failed. But the truth is, after 35 years of nonstop work, Walter suddenly realized something: he no longer fit the life he had built. The dream of the big house, the sense of status, none of it brought him joy anymore. He told me, I feel like dried clay, no longer shapeable. But here's the thing. Stoicism taught me this. There's nothing wrong with recreating yourself. As long as you're alive, you can still change. We often think that starting over is something meant for the young. But you and I both know some truths only reveal themselves after we've walked far enough to understand what we chose at 30 may no longer serve us at 60. Rebirth is not a sign of failure. It is the most honest expression of courage, the courage to say, I've changed. And I need to live in alignment with that change. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're living in an old outfit, but your soul has outgrown it? Walter left his job and started learning sculpture. something he had once loved in his youth. Every day he worked with clay, molding, shaping, and in doing so he was slowly reshaping himself. No rush, no noise, just a man returning to the truest version of who he was meant to be. I'm reminded of a quote by Epictetus. "No one is forever imprisoned in their old self if they have the courage to step beyond it." Do you have that courage? I believe you do. And if you find yourself standing at the edge of a new beginning, whether you're 55, 65, or 75, I want you to know this. It's not too late. It's right on time. Lesson 3. Fear of judgment is an invisible chain. I want you to recall a moment like this. You were about to say something honest, but you stopped. Because someone was in the room. A glance, a judging silence. And just like that, you swallowed your truth. You nodded along. You turned your back on yourself just to keep the peace. I know that feeling. I've done it many times. And the strange thing is, the fear of judgment isn't real. It doesn't live out there. It lives in our minds like a poisonous whisper. A woman I once worked with, her name was Maria, 59 years old, said through tears, "I've lived my whole life trying to please my mother-in-law, my boss, my friends, everyone but myself." She never dared to take singing lessons, even though she longed for it. Because my voice isn't as good as my sister's. She never dared to write, even though she secretly kept a journal every night. And she never dared to live differently, because what will people think? But Stoicism taught me something very clear. We cannot control what others say, but we can fully control how we choose to live. These invisible chains, the comparisons, the eyes of others, the critical voices, they only have power if we allow them to. I often ask people this one question. If you could live one day without fear of being judged, what would you do? Their answers often bring them to tears, because it reveals what they've buried for years. Remember this. The people who judge you, they are not you. They don't live with the consequences of your choices. They don't wake up in your body every morning. So why should they have the power to shape your life? Seneca once wrote, "Nothing suffocates the soul more than the fear of being seen." True freedom begins the moment you choose to live by your own values, even when no one claps, no one understands. Lesson 4. Choose action over overthinking. One afternoon a few years ago, I sat with a man named Charles, 62 years old, recently retired, and lost. My whole life I worked like a machine, he told me. Now I finally have time, and I don't know what to do with it. He said he'd thought about moving, picking up the guitar again, even writing a memoir. But there he was, analyzing, comparing, hesitating, second-guessing, and in the end, doing nothing. Have you ever felt like that? So many things you want to do, yet every idea is tangled with a fear. Is it worth it? Am I good enough? What if people laugh? Stoicism taught me one simple but powerful principle. Action is the only thing that's real. Thoughts without action are just illusions. Overthinking is the sweetest thief of time. It makes us feel like we're preparing when really, we're just hiding. I told Charles something small, very small. Tomorrow, just pick up the guitar for 10 minutes. Don't worry about being good. Don't worry about being perfect. Just play. 3 months later, he called me, his voice trembling, and said he was now playing every morning, and even teaching his grandson. You see, a single small step can shift the entire course of a life. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let a complicated mind stop you from taking a simple action. The action doesn't have to be big, it just needs to begin. One phone call, one sentence on a page, one step outside. And from there, the miracle begins." Lesson 5. Small daily progress is greater than grand occasional change. I once met a 74-year-old gentleman named Henry living in Portland. One day he told me, "I want to change." I want to be less short-tempered, live more slowly, and meditate every day. But every time I start, I do too much and give up. Sound familiar? I think many of us, especially as we enter our 50s or 60s, carry a sense of urgency. We think I don't have much time left. I need to change right now. And so we push ourselves into grand goals. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. I'll walk 5 kilometers. I'll write a book. But after a few days, the body aches. The mind tires. And we return to square one, more discouraged, more doubtful than before. But Stoicism never asks you to become a saint overnight. On the contrary, it teaches, it is small, steady progress that builds a deep and lasting life. Remember, the ocean doesn't wear down stone with a single wave. It does so with millions of gentle waves returning every day. Seneca once wrote, "No habit is stronger than the quiet repetition of right action day after day." Henry didn't need to meditate for 30 minutes. He started with 3. Just 3 minutes, every morning. Then 3 became 5. 5 became 10. 4 months later, he wrote to me, "I don't just meditate regularly. I've learned to be patient with myself. And you know what? That's the greatest victory of all, to honor your own pace and keep walking forward." Lesson 6. Focus on what you control. Let go of the rest. I once had a session with a 61-year-old woman named Janet. She was constantly tired, anxious, overwhelmed. When I asked her what she thought about most during the day, she said, "I can't sleep because my son won't listen. I get furious every time I watch the news. I worry about the economy, about war, about the weather, about things I can't do anything about." I sat quietly for a moment, then asked her, "How much of that is actually within your control?" She went silent, and then she cried. Have you ever felt like Janet? Like the world is pressing down on you and you're powerless to stop it? Stoicism teaches what may be its most essential and liberating principle. Focus only on what you can control. Let go of the rest. Epictetus once said, "There are 2 kinds of things in life, what we can control and what we cannot. Suffering comes from forgetting the difference. You can't control the weather, but you can bring an umbrella. You can't control what others think, but you can control how you respond. You can't control the past, but you can choose how to retell it as a lesson, not a wound." When Janet began writing 2 columns, What I Control and What I Don't, she told me it felt like lifting a 40-year weight off her shoulders. She started meditating, limited her news intake, spent more time gardening, cooking, writing handwritten letters to loved ones. Simple things, but they felt real because they were hers to shape. Lesson 7. Letting go is not losing. It's returning to yourself. I want you to picture this. You're walking down a forest path. With each step, you realize you're carrying a heavy backpack. Inside are old expectations, relationships that no longer fit, unspoken words you swallowed, and the quiet fear of, am I still enough? You know what's strange? That backpack, no one told you to wear it. You put it on out of habit, out of fear, because you never thought to lay it down. A 58-year-old man named Mark once said to me, "I hold on to too many things, from old clothes to memories that hurt. I'm afraid that if I let them go, I'll lose a part of myself." I told him, "No, Mark. When you let go, you're not losing yourself. You're finally coming back to yourself." Stoicism taught me this. We were not born to possess, but to experience, and then to gently release what no longer serves the journey. Like a gardener pruning the branches, not because he hates the tree, but because he loves its life. You let go not because you're weak, but because you are strong enough to know peace is worth more than memories. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Simplify your life. Let go of what is not essential gently." Mark started clearing out his house. But more importantly, he began clearing his heart, forgiving his father, letting go of a relationship that never had clarity, and returning to his love of photographing nature, something that made him feel truly alive. Lesson 8. The past is a museum, not a place to live in. I once sat with a 65-year-old woman named Linda. She had just come out of a marriage that ended after more than 30 years. She said to me, "I don't know who I am anymore. I keep living in the what-ifs. What if I had been braver? What if I had made a different choice? What if I could be young again?" I looked at her and told her a story. I once visited Florence, Italy, and went to the Uffizi Gallery. Inside, there were hundreds of paintings, marble statues, ancient traces of time. I stood there, reflected, learned. But then I left. No one lives in a museum, Linda. We pass through to learn, not to stay. The past is the same. Stoicism taught me this. You don't need to erase your past, but you must stop using it as a reason not to move forward. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not because of what happened, but because of how we keep holding it in our minds." You can visit the museum of your life from time to time. Look back, shed a tear, smile, take a lesson, but don't pitch a tent there. Linda began to write. She wrote journals, letters to herself, even unsent letters to the one who left, all to discover I don't have to keep playing the role of who I used to be. I can begin today with wisdom, not regret. The present is a gift. And you, whether 55 or 75, are still worthy of a new beginning. Lesson 9. Don't wait for life to happen. Go create it. I once met a man named George, 60 years old, early retired, after years of driving long-haul trucks. During our conversation, he looked out the window and said in a quiet, steady voice, "I thought life would just show up. But now I realize it doesn't." I asked him, "So what do you do each morning?" He replied, "I wait for inspiration, for something to happen." Sound familiar? Many people, especially in midlife and beyond, begin living as spectators, sitting quietly hoping for the main act of their own lives to begin. They don't write the script. They don't step onto the stage. They just wait and wait until time runs out. But Stoicism never teaches us to be spectators. On the contrary, you were not born to wait. You were born to build a life that means something. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Act as if this were the last thing you could do in life. No delay, no waiting." George began to change. With one small step, he signed up for a woodworking class at the local church. Every morning, he left the house and worked with his hands, crafting simple wooden chairs. "I don't wait for life to bring me meaning anymore," he said with a smile. "I make it with my own hands. You don't need to do something grand, but you do need to do something. Call an old friend. Cook yourself a kind, nourishing meal. Write a single page in your journal. These small actions, they are the beginning of a life with substance. A life you create." Lesson 10. Patience and perseverance are the bedrock of Stoicism. One winter afternoon, I received an email from a man named Raymond, 68 years old. He wrote, "I've tried so hard to forgive my late father, but every time I think of him, I still feel angry. I feel like a failure." I paused after reading his message, because I understood. Some wounds don't heal in a day. Some lessons take a lifetime to digest. I wrote back to him, "Raymond, you are not failing. You are living the essence of Stoicism. You're continuing, day by day, even when it's hard, even when you see no immediate result. Stoicism isn't about mastering your emotions instantly. It's about returning to yourself each time you stray. You might feel anger today and learn to soften tomorrow. You might fall this morning and stand again by evening, as long as you don't give up on yourself. Seneca once said, "No one becomes wise without perseverance. Every mountain is conquered by patient steps." I often compare this journey to climbing a steep hill. Some days you move with strength. Some days you slip backward. But the most important thing, you don't turn around and descend. Raymond didn't need to completely change in a week. He just needed to be honest with his pain and stay committed to healing. 3 months later, he wrote me again, "I haven't forgotten. But I've stopped blaming, and for the first time in 40 years, I feel light." Lesson 11. Good habits are allies on the path of letting go. I once worked with a woman named Shirley, 63 years old. She had lost her husband 5 years earlier, and for the first 4 of those years, her days became a quiet, endless loop. Wake up, turn on the TV, eat something quick, then sit still for hours, staring out at the backyard. When I asked her, "How do you remember him?" she answered, tears in her eyes, with silence and exhaustion. You see, grief doesn't always hit like a storm. Sometimes it wears you down like a slow, invisible erosion. I didn't tell Shirley to be strong or move on. I simply suggested one small thing each morning before doing anything: sit and breathe for 5 minutes. No thinking, no analyzing, just breathe. A week later, she started journaling. 2 weeks later, she began walking for 10 minutes around her house. By the end of the month, she asked her niece to teach her how to take photos with her phone. Bit by bit, she began to live again. Stoicism never expects you to be superhuman. On the contrary, it honors small, repeated practices like a gentle stream shaping a solid rock. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The mind is strengthened not by lofty thoughts, but by simple daily discipline." Good habits like meditation, journaling, deep breathing, light movement don't just calm your emotions. They build a quiet system of stability, helping you stand tall in the chaos. Shirley didn't get over her grief, but she learned to live with it more gently, and she began to see light, not at the end of the tunnel, but in each new morning. Lesson 12. Preserve your mental energy. An old classmate of mine, Tom, 66 years old, once shared with me that every night before bed he replayed the same question in his mind. "Why was I so stupid back then?" he said. "It's like I'm stuck in a film reel playing the same scene over and over, and each time I hate myself a little more." I looked at him, and in his eyes I didn't see awareness. I saw exhaustion, not from what happened in the past, but from how much energy he'd spent fighting it. So I asked him a simple question, "Tom, if you had 100 units of energy each day, how many would you spend living and how many punishing yourself?" That question made him pause. For a long time, Stoicism taught me this. Replaying a mistake doesn't erase it, but learning from it and then letting go is wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your mind is your most precious asset. Keep it clean and don't turn it into a prison." Instead of asking, "Why did I do that?" ask, "What did I learn and how can I apply it now?" Tom began a daily practice of writing down 3 things: a mistake he once made, a lesson he learned from it, one small action to avoid repeating it. Within a month, he felt lighter, not because the past had changed, but because he had transformed his relationship with it. Lesson 13. Planned action is the key to breaking through stagnation. I have an acquaintance named Sam, 64 years old, retired early after his company merged. He told me he felt frozen. "Every day I plan to do something, but I never know where to start. So I just don't." I asked, "Do you know what's holding you back?" He replied, "Too many things need to change at once. I feel overwhelmed." I understood. Many people, after a life shift, a loss, or simply stepping into a new chapter, often feel paralyzed by the weight of all they should do. And the longer they wait, the heavier it becomes, like a boulder blocking the path. But Stoicism taught me this. Every big change begins with a small clarity and a single intentional step. Write down what you want to let go of. Be as specific as possible. Then break it into small, doable actions. For example, if you want to let go of a toxic relationship, start by writing a letter to yourself about how you truly feel. If you want to release guilt, meet with a trusted friend and speak your truth. If you want to change your lifestyle, don't reinvent your life. Just wake up 15 minutes earlier each morning. Seneca once wrote, "A person is not lost because they lack strength, but because they lack direction." Sam gave it a try. He wrote down 3 things that were weighing him down and picked one small action for each. A week later, he had gone swimming again for the first time in 8 years. You don't have to move fast. You just need to be clear and commit to steps small enough to sustain but real enough to guide. Lesson 14. The story you tell shapes the feelings you carry. I once met a woman named Grace, 70 years old. She had lived an admirable life, raised 3 children, survived cancer, and spent much of her middle age caring for a mother with dementia. And yet when she sat across from me, her eyes were heavy, full of guilt. "I always feel like I wasn't good enough," she said. "I got angry often. Sometimes I just wanted to give up. And I hate myself for that." I gently asked her, "If a close friend told you this exact story, what would you say to her?" She paused, then whispered, "I'd hold her. I'd say, 'You've done more than enough. No one is perfect.'" I smiled and replied, "Then why do you tell such a harsh version of the story to yourself?" Stoicism teaches this. No event is inherently good or bad. What matters is how we interpret it. Each of us is the storyteller of our own life. But too often, the voice inside our head becomes the harshest narrator, more critical, more unforgiving than anyone else could be. Epictetus once said, "It is not events that disturb us, but the way we view them." You can describe a past mistake as a stupid decision or as a necessary lesson. You can see yourself as weak or as someone learning to grow stronger day by day. Grace began to change with one simple habit. Each day she rewrote one old story, but with a voice of compassion, not sugar-coated, but no longer condemning. 3 weeks later, she told me, "I feel gentler now, not just with others, but finally with myself." Lesson 15. You're not a victim. You're the one who can rewrite the script. A man I once worked with, Daniel, 72 years old, said something I've never forgotten. "I've lived as if life were a sentence I didn't get to choose." Daniel grew up in a wounded family, worked hard from a young age, went through a divorce, lost a business, and for decades he carried the weight of believing life has treated me unfairly. I didn't deny that he had known real pain. But then I asked him, "If you were the author of the rest of your life, what would you write?" He looked at me for a long time, then smiled. "No one's ever asked me that," he said. "I think I'd want to be free." Stoicism never denies that life brings us things we didn't choose, but it always emphasizes one thing. You may not control the first chapters, but you have complete authorship over what comes next. Seneca once wrote, "We don't choose the cards we're dealt, but we choose how to play them, and that choice defines who we become." You can keep living by an old story, or you can start rewriting it with a better question. What did I learn from that? How can I live today so I don't repeat it? Daniel began journaling every night as if he were rewriting his life's script. In it, he cast himself not as a helpless victim, but as a man strong enough to heal. 3 months later, he told me, "I don't need to erase the past. I just need to stop letting it write the rest of my life for me." Dear friend, if you're healing, growing, living with more intention, and finding yourself with fewer friends, fewer compliments, that's not failure. That's a sign you're on the right path. Don't go back just to make others comfortable. Don't shrink just to help someone feel safe. Keep going, because those who truly love you will eventually learn to face the mirror with courage, not resistance. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I don't know who you are, where you live, or what you're going through, but I believe this: if you still have the patience to sit with a lesson about stillness, then within you, there is a deep strength waiting to awaken. Maybe you've been misunderstood. Maybe you've shrunk yourself. Maybe you've sacrificed too much. But starting today, you can choose to live differently. No need for noise. No need for rebellion. Just live true to yourself. As the Stoics once taught, let peace be your answer, and let your presence speak for itself. If something I shared resonated with you, keep walking this path in your own way. And if you know someone who's tired, lost, or overwhelmed, share this video with them. Maybe it will be the first light they see after a long, dark road.